The metropolis. Historical records, collections of pre-Islamic poetry, and what is known of the habits, customs, norms and traditions of the Arabians show that the people of Mecca had already been drawn into the stream of urban culture from their earlier rural, nomadic existence. The Quran describes the city as the mother of towns. And thus we have inspired in the lecture in Arabic, that you may warn the mother town and those around it, and may warn of a day of assembling whereof there is no doubt. A host will be in the garden and a host of them in the flame. Quran 42:7. At another place Mecca is designated as the land made safe. By the fig and the olive, by Mount Sinai, and by this land made safe. Quran 95:1-3. The Quran also calls it a city. Nay, I swear by this city, and you art an indweller of this city. Quran 90:1-2. Mecca had long passed from nomadic barbarism to the stage of urban civilization by the middle of the 5th century. The city was ruled by a confederacy based on mutual cooperation, unity of purpose and a general consensus on the division of administrative and civil functions between self-governing clans, and this system had already been brought into existence by Qusay bin Kilab. Prophet Muhammad, being fifth in the line of succession to Qusay bin Kilab, the latter can be placed in the middle of the 5th century. Mecca, thinly populated in the beginning, was located between the two hills called Jabal Abu Qubais, adjacent to Mount Safa, and Jabal Ammar, known as Araf during the pre-Islamic days, opposite the valley of Quaqiqan. The population of the town increased gradually owing partly to the reverence paid to the Kaaba and the regardful position of its priests and attendants, and partly because of the peace prevailing in the vicinity of the sanctuary. The tents and shacks had given place to houses made of mud and stones, and the habitation had spread over the hillocks and low-lying valleys around the Kaaba. At the outset the people living in Mecca abstained from constructing even their housetops in a rectangular shape like the Kaaba, since they considered it to be a sign of disrespect to the house of God, but gradually the ideas changed. Still, they kept the height of their houses lower than that of that Kaaba. As related by certain persons, the houses were initially made in a circular shape as a mark of respect to the Kaaba. The first rectangular house, reported to have been built by Humayd bin Zuhair, was looked upon with disfavor by the Quraysh. The chiefs and other well-to-do persons among the Quraysh usually built their houses of stones and had many rooms in them, with 2 doors on the opposite sides, so that the womenfolk did not feel inconvenience in the presence of guests. Reconstruction of Mecca. Qusay bin Kilab had played a leading role in the reconstruction and expansion of Mecca. The Quraysh, who had been dispersed over a wide area, were brought together by him in the valley of Mecca. He allocated areas for settlement of different families and encouraged them to construct their houses in the specified localities. The successors of Qusay continued to consolidate the living quarters and to allocate spare lands to new families coming into Mecca. The process continued peacefully for a long time, with the result that the habitations of the Quraysh and their confederate clans grew up, making Mecca a flourishing city. The city-state. Qusay bin Kilab and his had assumed a commanding position over the city and its inhabitants. They were the custodians of the Kaaba, had the privilege of sakaya or watering the pilgrims and arranging the annual feast, presided over the meetings of the House of Assembly, Dar al-Nadwa, and handed out war banners. Qusay bin Kilab had built the House of Assembly close to the Kaaba, with one of its doors leading to the sanctuary. It was used both as a living quarter by Qusay and the rendezvous for discussing all matters of commonweal by the Quraysh. No man or woman got married, no discussion on any important matter was held, no declaration of war was made, and no sheet of cloth was cast on the head, 104, of any girl reaching marriageable age except in this house. Qusay's authority during his life and after his death was deemed sacrosanct, like religious injunctions which could not be violated by anybody. The meetings of the House of Assembly could be attended only by the Quraysh and their confederate tribesmen, that is, those belonging to Hashim, Umayyah, Maksum, Joma, Sam, Taim, Adi, Asad, Nawfal and Zurah, whatever be their age, while people of other tribes not below the age of 40 years were allowed to participate in its meetings. After the death of Qusay, the offices held by him were divided between different families. Banu Hashim were given the right of watering the pilgrims. The standard of Quraysh called Akab went to Banu Umayyah, Bani Nawfal were allocated Rifada, Banu Abduldar were assigned priesthood, wardenship of the Kaaba and the standard of war, and Banu Asad held the charge of the House of Assembly. These families of the Quraysh used to entrust these responsibilities to the notable persons belonging to their families. Thus, Abu Bakr, who came from Banu Taim, was responsible for realizing blood money, fines and gratuity. Khalid, of Banu Maksum held charge of the apparatus of war kept in a tent during the peacetime and on the horseback during battles. Umar bin al-Khattab was sent as the envoy of Quraysh to other tribes with whom they intended to measure swords, or where a tribe bragging of its superiority wanted the issue to be decided by a duel. Safwan b. Umayyah of Bani Joma played at the dice, which was deemed essential before undertaking any important task, and Harith bin Qais was liable to perform all administrative business besides being the custodian of offerings to the idols kept in the Kaaba. The duties allocated to these persons were hereditary offices held earlier by their forefathers.